We are now going to move on to making ointment using fusion method, which means heat is involved. We're melting the ointment base, but our active ingredient is volatile or heat sensitive. This exercise is taken from the pharmaceutical practice, and we're looking at methyl salicylate. Now, the methyl salicylate formulation calls for methyl salicylate, and we're making 35 grams here. And because it's fusion, we normally make 20% extra. 20% of 30 gram would have really been 36 gram, but we're going with what the textbook actually did. We want methyl salicylate, beeswax, and hydrous wool fat. So take note that you're using hydrous wool fat for this formulation. The proposed method in the textbook says to grate and weigh the beeswax, melt it with the hydrous wool fat, which is weighed. The hydrous wool fat is very sticky, so your book actually emphasized that you weigh it on a piece of paper where you can scrape and recover it, and not a container. You add both to the evaporating basin. You can melt them one at a time or put two of them together, because the water bath temperature or the hot plate should be very low, where you're not destroying the ingredient if you merge them together. Now, once those have melted, it says here that you remove it from the heat and stir until almost cold, but not cold. So it's still a little bit soft. Then you're going to stir in the methyl salicylate. Now, in making this ointment, you may find that lumps, because the methyl salicylate would have been, not really cold, but room temperature, and the ointment would have been on the warmer side of stuff. So you can actually get clumpy or lumpy mixtures right here. I've stated it in the mixture, but you stir it until cold. So what in making this product as a model, I normally transfer everything from the container onto an ointment slab, spatulate it effectively to remove any lumpiness that may came through, and then you pack it in the ointment as you would package, where you line the jar and pack the ointment. And of course, methyl salicylate has to be packaged in a glass. Plastic should never be used, because it will actually seep into the walls or leach into the walls of the container, and you'll lose the active ingredient and compromise the packaging container as well. Our next slide, we're looking at not a volatile ingredient, but we are now looking at something which is thick, viscous, and does not smell good, malodorous, ichthymol. This formulation is ichthymol ointment BPC, which is made with 10 grams of ichthymol, 10 grams of wool fat, and take note, they're using yellow soft paraffin, because ichthymol is quite discolored. As you can see here, it is almost black, viscous, with a strong tarry odor. How would we make this? We would use a glass container, beaker, that is heat resistant or resilient. Avoid porcelain or evaporating dish if it doesn't stain that much, because I've seen in some books where they use a porcelain dish. But if you do have glass, use your glass. You need to verify the melting point, because here we have wool fat, white soft paraffin, and you're always guided by the temperature to know how to set your hot plate or your water bath. All fusion method, you need to know the melting point of your ingredients to know the temperature you're working with. You record the weight of the beaker, because you'll be adding the ichthymol by weight. Let's look carefully at this procedure. Record the weight of the beaker and place it on the steam bath or hot plate. Add the base ingredients, which is the wool fat and the yellow soft paraffin, to the beaker and allow to melt. Swirl to mix. Do not add any stirring device. Don't dip any stirring device, whether you're stirring with our spatula, because if you dip it in, you're going to actually remove some weight from the base whenever you're stirring. Now, at this point, you'll remove the melted base from the heat and stir until cool. Now, you're going to place this on the top loading balance, or the not analytical balance, but your top loading balance. But before I go, let me pause to remind you, if you're using the water bath, moisture and steam will be on the bottom of the container. So it's important to say in your procedure that you dry the base of the container before you put it on the balance. If not, and you use a hot plate, there's no moisture being at the bottom of your beaker. So there's no need to say you dry the base if you are using a hot plate. So in your books, you don't see them telling you dry the base of the container. If you use a steam bath, we're just telling you that. Now, when you do that now, you need to add, if we were making this formulation here and it says 10 gram, you would add the HTML dropwise until you achieve the weight that you desire, right? So you are making this product by weight. The HTML is so thick, if you pre-weigh it in a container, there's no way you can scrape everything from it. If you pre-weigh it in a container, melt the wool fat and soft paraffin, and then when you melt the wool fat and soft paraffin, as it cools to about 40 degrees, you scrape it into the container where the HTML is, there's still going to be some loss. Okay, there's some level of error that will take place. So it's for you to choose the procedure that minimizes your error. So do you choose to add the HTML dropwise into the beaker, or you weigh the HTML in a container, have it ready, melt the wool fat and soft paraffin, while it is still fluid, you scrape it into the container with the HTML and you stir. But if you're going to do that, you need I would say like a silicone spatula, which is flexible, that can allow you to scrape all of the base into the container where the HTML is waiting on you. So, but in your textbook, it actually says you add the HTML to the melt. So here we have inserted add it dropwise. How do you do this? You can use a glass stirring rod. Get some excess HTML in a beaker and a glass stirring rod. Dip the stirring rod in the beaker with the HTML and allow gravity to allow drops and drops of HTML into the melt while on the balance. Pause and wait for the balance to respond. And once you've accurately added what you need with minimal error, then you can start stirring. At this point, you insert your stirring device into the ointment and stir until congeal. Again, you package this in a glass container because of the odor and the nature of the HTML. So this example can be found in Cooper and Guns dispensing for pharmaceutical students.